Prepare to win with PFF Fantasy. Use PFF's exclusive rankings, projections, advanced statistics, and more to win your draft in August and set the best lineups through the end of the regular season. Made special for the podcast listeners, use PFF promo code 49erspod to save 20% on PFF's Edge or Elite subscription anytime between now and the end of the season. Go to PFF.com to sign up today.
You've tuned in to the 49ers Rush podcast, and here is your host, John Chapman.
Welcome to another episode of the 49ers Rush podcast. I am your host, John Chapman, and we've got a fun one for you today. We're going to be going over some practice reports, the good and the bad, and there is some bad, injury updates, and as promised earlier this week, we will give you the crazy, in-depth defensive breakdown of the 49ers win over the Cowboys, which, sorry for the wait. The NFL has decided not to release all 22, the wide-angle version film or the end zone version on NFL Game Pass for preseason, which I don't know why they're doing that, but it's made grading the film pretty hard, pretty rough whenever you can't see all the players the whole time. So, but I promised I would get it out, so here it is. It is going to be towards the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that. But there's a lot of news going on with the 49ers. You know, one, we finished up our last practice in Santa Clara, and they are now in Denver. Friday and Saturday, depending on when you are listening to this, they will be having joint practices with the Denver Broncos. Now, here's what's important, and unfortunately, we don't get to see it all. Those 2 days are so much more valuable, and these are in the words of Kyle Shanahan, than the preseason game that we're going to get Monday night. Now, I will break down the preseason game Monday night. However, those two joint practices, the starters will get so much more work. And the main reason for that is you are able to control the entire atmosphere for your starters. Namely, you don't have to worry near as much about injuries because nobody's being taken to the ground on team versus team. And you don't have to worry about your quarterback getting hit. So the coaches are willing to leave the starters in for a much longer and get a lot more work, very similar to how it is in training camp where the ones are out there predominantly the whole time. So these next 2 days are going to be huge. Friday and Saturday, just those joint practices. Excited to see what's going to come out. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to do a summary podcast on those two practices probably on Sunday. So stay tuned for that, and also just preparing you for what to watch for in the Monday Night Football game, 49ers versus the Broncos. We've got our own night, the very first Monday Night Football game of the year. Why not start it off with the 49ers? So, a couple things just from Tuesday and Wednesday's practices, injury updates. Elijah Lee, who we're going to talk about a little bit in this podcast, he messed up his thumb. He's going to be out 2 weeks. Also, DJ Jones with a knee sprain week to week. These are players that, you know, before training camp, I would have said we're almost locks, you know, just outside that kind of lock category to make the roster. DJ Jones's value is continuing to descend. I like him a lot, especially as that early down kind of nose tackle run stuffer. But, man, the better that Sheldon Day and Julian continue to play, it is going to continue to make DJ Jones a little bit less valuable because he doesn't offer the same versatility. I put out a tweet earlier this week. You can follow me at JL_Chapman saying, man, DJ Jones is my first player outside of the 53-man roster, and a lot of people got upset. I also had Marcel Harris outside as well, and people didn't like that. But, hey, that's okay. I don't mind it if people don't like it. These are my opinions. I love the debate. I love telling me why you think Marcel Harris will make it, why you think DJ Jones will make it. I want to have those conversations. Jimmy Ward, he is in the blue non-contact jersey, but he should be back some point this week. Marcel Harris is good to go. He had that stinger from the game, but he's going to be all right. The timetable continues to be kind of set and strengthened for Trent Taylor, that 4 to 6 weeks with the Jones fracture. Now, Kittle was held out with calf soreness, tightness, one report said. So nothing too big there, just kind of precautionary. With a calf, you want to be careful because it could just be tight or a cramp, in which case you want to rest it. You're going to be done for the day, especially in practice. But if it does go into that strain, that's where that 2-week timetable just hits like a basically reset button. So if you do strain your calf, you've got to just basically do nothing for 2 weeks. You can ride the bike a little bit with no pressure. But if you can go about 2 to 3 weeks without it straining or acting up again, you're safe. However, if it strains again, it just restarts that 2 to 3 week cycle every time you mess with it. So nothing really serious there, but nothing you want to push, that's for damn sure, especially this early. Deebo Samuel missed practice for some personal reasons. Haven't seen exactly what that's about, but the coaches didn't seem too alarmed. Hopefully everything's okay with him and his family. Malcolm Smith, because he is Malcolm Smith, he could only go through warm-ups on Wednesday because his hamstring, big surprise. He was able to get a full practice in on Thursday, however. CJ Beathard, he came back on Thursday. He hit his throwing ham on the helmet during the game, so he sat out Wednesday, but he was back in for team drills on Thursday. Drake Greenlaw, he had a stinger, so he was out portion of Thursday's practice, and Greg Mabin with the calf issue as well. Now, here's what Twitter is blowing up about today, so we might as well talk about it. The Jimmy Garoppolo threw 5 straight interceptions in team, which, man, that's impressive. 5 straight interceptions. Now, it's interesting because, unfortunately, as the 49ers continue to be one of those teams that the media and a lot of NFL experts are saying this is a team to watch out for. They're going to be good. Last year the expectations were very, very high after, Garoppolo comes out and wins, those last 5 games, all that kind of stuff. So we got it. So we had a whole lot of expectations early. With that comes the naysayers and whatever else, and it's just part of the game. With hype comes expectations, and with expectations comes all the chicken littles in the world, which unfortunately the 49ers fan base does have some. Call them out whenever you do see them do that. Tell them to go root for the Raiders or somebody else. But here's the deal. Jimmy Garoppolo went about 9 straight training camp practices before he threw an actual interception. I think it was like day 11. Now, there were 2 interceptions. One was off of a drop from a wide receiver that hit him in the chest, and another one that was off of a tipped pass at the line of scrimmage. Jimmy Garoppolo has never really had a turnover issue. So what do we do with 5 straight interceptions? Do you chalk it up to a bad day? How do you handle that? I really don't know. Now, I can tell you he responded very well after the 5 interceptions. He did go out there and throw 2 touchdown passes. But before I get to that, I want to talk about who got the interceptions. Because, again, keep in mind, this team ranked dead last in the history of the NFL since the merger in interceptions last year. We only had 2 interceptions, and neither were from a cornerback. Well, the 5 interceptions came from Tart got 1, Moore got 1, Richard Sherman got a pick 6, Witherspoon got 1, and then the 5th one was Tarvarius Moore again. So there's a lot that we could take away from this on the opposing side of the ball. One, we are having a secondary that is actually attacking the ball and going and getting that. 2, both of our starting corners, probably, Richard Sherman and Witherspoon, both got an interception. So that already, the fact that they got 2 and 5 consecutive passes, the cornerbacks, this is something to be excited about. And this is what happens whenever you practice against yourselves. You want it to be a give and take. You never want the defense to dominate the offense completely, and you never want the offense to dominate the defense. You want it back and forth. So these 5 interceptions happen. I love that Kyle Shanahan said, hey, you got to stay out there. We got to fix this. We got to get better. He goes back and responds by throwing 2 touchdown passes, one to Kyle Juszczyk and then another one to Jalen Hurd. So Hurd seems to be the big name in the NFL right now, and rightfully so. He is something special. And if you add to the fact, the Trent Taylor injury or Dante Pettis and how he's just behind, Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd can take up that slack, which they showed that they could do in the second half versus the backups of the Cowboys. Now let's see what they can do versus Denver. My guess is they are going to be getting a little bit more snaps working in with the ones, especially Jalen Hurd. I really think that we're going to see that. Now, a couple just random things from the game. So let's jump over quickly and break down that 49ers versus Cowboys game on the defensive side. If you didn't listen already to the offensive one, that's going to be the episode right before this. And if you want the instant reaction episode, the night of the game, you can go back. That's 2 episodes before. And this is going to kind of mimic the schedule we're going to be on from here on out, trying to get out 3 to 4 podcasts a week. Now, preseason is going to be rough because we've got plenty of time. Now between the Denver game, there were 10 days before those games. But right after that, it's going to be the last 2 games are within 10 days. So it's the exact opposite of the first 2 weeks where we had plenty of time to break it down. The weeks after the Denver game are going to pick up and go so stinking fast. You're going to basically have 3 total games if you count the Denver game. Then the next 2 preseason games all happen within 10 days of each other. Then you have cut downs. And then it's week 1 for Tampa Bay. So the slow-paced news cycle for 49ers fan, that is done. It is 100% go time. And I could not be happier. So just from the game alone, we sat 29 healthy people. So we had 29 people from whether you consider them starters, backups, whatever. Most of those are first and second string for the 49ers that just didn't play, which was the exact opposite of what the Cowboys did because they went out there with their starters on offense and defense, and their defensive starters played 2 consecutive series. So let's go over the best and worst grades according to Pro Football Focus. And again, you take all of this with a grain of salt, and you chill out a little bit, and you try to see where things are and why they graded them, which we're going to be breaking down. Now, the best players, the best top 5, I did you had to have at least 20 snaps. The number 1 graded player was Leroy Reynolds, Will linebacker, then Demetrius Flanagan Fowles. But however, they didn't take very many snaps. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to fit. We'll see what happens with Leroy Reynolds. If he can beat out somebody like Elijah Lee and Malcolm Smith, then he's got a shot, but he's also got to beat out Aziz. We'll talk about him in a second. He played great. Now, Anton Exum, he was absolutely amazing. Exum Jr., sorry, I know I pronounce that wrong all the time. 43 total snaps, so he had an 83.6 grade. He had the highest grade. Julian Taylor, absolutely incredible, even though his stats aren't there. That guy lives in the backfield. 76.3 grade. DeMontre Moore staying with the defensive line. Our backups are still our best players out there. 73.2. Jeremiah Valoga with his 2 sacks, 72.8. And then Aziz Al-Shahar, 71.5. Honorable mention are both our slot guys who just balled out, Emmanuel Mosley and DJ Reed. So that's going to kind of be the top defensive players. Now if we go to the other side, yikes. It's pretty bad. Worst player in the worst grade was Tim Harris, which I was a little surprised. I'm not going to lie. He did really well tackling. However, he did give up a lot of catches, and he was targeted heavily. He was targeted 9 times, gave up 5 catches for 68 yards. And so that's kind of why his grade was so low. He just got a low coverage grade. But there were a lot of promising things that I saw there that the kid's going to be special. Jordan Thomas and Jamel Garcia-Williams, I'm not really going to talk about. I don't think that they have a shot to make the roster. Marcel Harris was very bad, 43.7. He was the defensive starter. We'll talk a little bit more about him. Adrian Colbert, even though he took 7 snaps before he got kicked out, 49.2 was terrible. Elijah Lee had a bad game, and now his injury. Things are just taking a very bad turn for the worse. He had a 50 grade even, and David Mayo, 50.5. Those linebackers, Elijah Lee and David Mayo, they are being surpassed. A lot of people liked Mayo early on, and I get it. His film was great, but it seems like the undrafted free agents, which Mayo is as well, they're starting to step up. Now, a couple other just honorable mentions for bad scores on Pro Football Focus is Witherspoon, DJ Jones, and Drake Greenlaw. Drake Greenlaw had a couple dynamite explosive plays, but he was taken advantage of in coverage big time. Just an experience. I come away from that game as positive. You want rookies to learn and play with excitement, which he did. He did a hell of a job doing that as well. But the problem with him was he struggled mightily with the play action fake. He was sucked up every time. So, all right, our defensive line starters for the game were DJ Jones, Sheldon Day, Kentavious Street, and DeMontre Moore on the outside. Now, Sheldon Day continues to just make a name for himself. He's able to get his hand on the ball. And so I would be willing to argue that if the NFL season started right now, Sheldon Day is going to be the starter. I really do believe that. He had one solo run stop. He had a 68.3 grade on 26 snaps, one tackle, and the one tipped pass. But that tipped pass was on third down inside the red zone. Stopped the drive, probably would have been a touchdown pass. The targeted receiver was open right behind him. So that is an absolutely huge thing. And whenever you have three defenders around him that are so great at pass rush, let's just say it's going to be D Ford, DeForest Buckner, Nick Bosa, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be in the face of the quarterback with his hands up, just messing up that passing lane, which is huge. Again, he led the team during training camp in tipped passes at the line. That's the good news. Bad news is if you watch the first 3 plays of the game against the one Cowboy offensive line, which is one of the best in the NFL, that dude got washed out of his gap 3 plays in a row. But he was able to hang in there and respond, and that's kind of his versatility. So if he can get a little stronger in the run game and anchor that inside, I do think it makes DJ Jones a little bit more expendable. Now, DeMontre Moore, man, this kid played really, really well. 44 snaps, 6 tackles. He had 3 quarterback hits by himself and an additional 3 quarterback hurries, which is absolutely incredible. 3 solo run stops as well. Just had a great tackle for loss to start the second drive. He played unbelievable. Had a fumble recovery as well. Just absolute great game from the former third-round pick. Curious to see where he's going to go. As we talk through these defensive line, it's unbelievable the depth. These are our third stringers. Third. And they're fighting to be on the second team. Now, Kentavious Street, our 4th-round pick out of last year, he was part of the All-ACL team that gets to sit out in redshirt a year. He had 47 snaps. He started at the right defensive end spot. 60.3 was his overall grade. And I think a lot of that grade was he got manhandled on that first drive by, it's not really his fault. Tyron Smith is one of the best tackles in the NFL. He's one of the most physically imposing tackles in the NFL. And I get it, Kentavious Street can squat 700 pounds. That's unbelievable. That's amazing. But whenever you go up against an all-pro left tackle, we kind of saw what happened. He got pancaked, I think, 3 times. 2 times on the first drive and then 1 more later on in the game. Welcome to the NFL. You're not a rookie anymore. You kind of got to, that's who you're going to be playing against if you're going to win playing time. He did get 2 tackles, 1 quarterback pressure. He got 2 solo run stops and a great tackle for loss on 2nd and 1. They showed the replay if you were watching the 49ers feed. It was very nice. He showed a lot of explosiveness and he showed a lot of power. I really think that his role on this team is for the future. He is basically, we can allow Eric Armstead to walk next year, and he would step in as the big defensive end on most run plays or base downs. That's kind of seems to be what they're grooming him for, more that power defensive end. Julian Taylor, becoming one of my favorite 49ers, 76.3 grade. He played 39 snaps, and this is kind of what he does. He had 0 tackles. He only had 1 quarterback pressure. He's not a stats guy, but he is the puzzle piece that makes it where the quarterback cannot step up in the pocket because he always plays on the offensive side of the ball. What I mean by that is if you watch the D-line on every single play he's in, there are no stalemates. He is never getting driven off the ball. He pushes the guard backwards every single play with pure power and leverage. This guy and his body transformation, which has been talked about by Matt Barrows in The Athletic, he was playing at about 270, 260 last year as a defensive end early on. He's playing 305 now, and it's not like he added bad weight. The dude is jacked. So really curious to see what's going to happen with his body and how that's going to determine or just how that's going to show up and develop, and if that power will stay there, the speed will stay there. I don't think he's going to be getting a lot of snaps, he's just awesome. He is very, very fun to watch and just very disruptive. Again, stats are never going to be there for him, but I do love how Pro Football Focus had him as one of the best players because he should be. That's just where he should be. Jeremiah Valoga, which we got to talk about, 33 snaps, 72.8. 2 sacks and an additional quarterback hit, gets signed literally the week of the game, and just looks great. He's been there for 2 days before his first game and just looked absolutely wonderful off the edge. You know, they talked about how he's just got fresh legs, but he did absolutely wonderful. Now, let's jump just real quick. There's not really a lot other guys that I want to talk about on the D-line that I think are going to have a role, but David Mayo, who I said earlier, he had a pretty bad game, and a lot of that was just, man, he got 6 tackles, which is great. He got 3 solo stops, but he was taking advantage of it in the passing game. Him and Dre Greenlaw, they just couldn't maintain their coverage responsibilities. They were selling out so quick to the run, and I get it. You know, you've got to read your keys. However, whenever the opposing offense is calling their first and second series plays and they're targeting you individually, that should tell you something. That means they saw something on film, or they're like, hey, let's just get these, rookie linebackers in here and let's try to take advantage of them. Now, Azeez, holy cow, probably the play of the game, one of the most imposing tackles. It was just, he came through the run gap so well, and it was a screen pass, and as it was just lofted up, as soon as the ball carrier caught it and turned around, he ran straight through him in such a violent way. It was absolutely incredible. He ends up with 4 tackles, 3 solo stops. He was targeted 4 times, gave up 2 catches, but only for 19 yards. So, absolute great game for him. That's Azeez. He played great. Now, if we look at our other linebackers, again, Leroy Reynolds played great. Nazocha got 12 snaps, didn't really do anything too special. Elijah Lee and Drake Greenlaw. Now, Drake Greenlaw made some great plays, no doubt about that. Had a great tackle for loss where he just exploded through his under read, and it was absolutely perfect. He met the ball carrier about 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and that's what you want to see. It's going to be up and down, and what you are hoping is that through all of this preseason snaps, guys like Drake Greenlaw will get more comfortable and then more consistent. That's what's really needed. Now let's jump to the cornerback position. Dante Johnson sucks. Don't want to spend any time talking about him. Now, Akilo Witherspoon, he only played 17 snaps, which you could say whatever you want about that. He's out there for 17 snaps. He was targeted once, and he gave up 1 reception. Because of that, it's what it is, and there were 5 yards after the catch on that 1 catch for 16 yards. He did have 1 tackle, but just nothing really good, nothing really bad. Craig Maben ended with a 61 rating, and again, 5 targets, 4 receptions. Not that good. Now, he didn't give up a lot of yards, which is wonderful, but he definitely didn't impact anything in a positive way. Now, if we go to the left cornerback, it seemed like Tim Harris was basically out there a lot. He logged 32 snaps. He was out there for predominantly the entire first half, and again, we talked a little bit about his target numbers. He was picked on pretty good. Now, there are some players that played both slot and outside cornerback, and they kind of rotated. And those 2 guys were DJ Reed and Emmanuel Mosley, who, man, we have to find a way to keep both these players. They are playmakers. I would love both of them to be that 4th outside cornerback over somebody like Dante Johnson, over somebody like Greg Maben. I would much rather have these 2 young guys who, they could play slot, but they could play outside. And so Mosley got the start over there. He played 43 snaps, and DJ Reed came out in the second half and got 34 snaps. And whenever a couple of the corners got busted up, Emmanuel Mosley went back out there and played some outside positions. So let's talk about Mosley first, just because he got to play first. He was all over the field. He had 4 tackles. He did miss a tackle, but he had 3 solo tackles by himself, run stops that were awesome. He was targeted 4 times, and he gave up 3 catches. But here is one of the things that's special to me. He only gave up 9 yards after the catch. for these 3 targets, playing one-on-one on the outside. He did get a penalty, but I thought it was total BS. But it's what it is. Just played wonderful. And if we look at DJ Reed, he's the exact opposite. He's the type of corner that's out there that you're not going to know is out there. No tackles. He got targeted once for no catch. He had 1 pass breakup. They threw away from DJ Reed. Emmanuel Mosley was out there. He was like Velcro. He was all draped all over the wide receiver, but they weren't afraid of him. DJ Reed, they just basically said, we are not going to throw around him. So a couple things to take there. Now, strong safety position. Marcel Harris, gosh, I don't know really what to say about him. He had 2 missed tackles. So he had 3 tackles, 2 missed tackles. He led the team there. That's not good. Also was targeted twice, gave up 2 catches, 5 yards after the catch and the huge penalty. Like, he did have 1 pass breakup, but he allowed the highest NFL passer rating out of the entire team, 118. Ahkello Witherspoon tied him with 118. You don't want that. That's not a good thing. I understand that Marcel Harris plays really, really hard, and I love that. However, at some point, you kind of got to help out and make a play. Now, if we're talking about free safety, Tavarius Moore, man, he is stepping up. He logged most of the snaps. He had 70 snaps at the free safety spot. Exum Jr. had 43. And again, whenever we're going off the Pro Football Focus snap count, sometimes they mix up which one's which, but that's whatever, besides the point. Tavarius Moore had 3 tackles and was not targeted once. No penalties, no missed tackles, no targets. I am 100% okay with that. Now, another interesting thing of note, Colbert and Exum Jr. weren't targeted at all in the passing game. So they were going short. They were attacking our inexperience on the edges and in the slot. Those are the guys that they were going after. But that's going to do it for us this episode of the 49ers Rush Podcast. Stay tuned because we got 2 fun days of joint practices, and there's going to be a lot of detailed reports out there. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe to the 49ers Rush Podcast. We are everywhere. Literally just type in 49ers wherever you listen to podcasts, and we will be the first one to pull up. We're going to be there, and if for some reason you're having a hard time, send me an email at 49ersrushpodcast@gmail.com. Or reach out to me on Twitter. My DMs are always open. That is JL_Chapman. Thank you, faithful, and stay strong.